Thank you for taking the time to learn about the Vermont Communication Support Project. If you have a client that has a disability that affects communication, the VCSP can be an incredibly valuable resource in helping them participate and engage effectively during their DCF meetings. When people are involved with the judicial process or the state administrative process, it is important that they comprehend and communicate as effectively as possible. Let's take a closer look at communication. Disability affects communication in many different ways. Some barriers to effective communication are straightforward, like comprehension, literacy, and memory, but other less obvious barriers, like the inability to regulate emotion, inability to focus, inability to prioritize information, can also be a result of disability and equally challenging when it comes to communicating effectively, especially in a difficult situation. A communication support specialist can help eliminate some of those barriers by working with the client to put necessary accommodations in place that will allow the individual the space to communicate to the best of their ability. If people are experiencing communication barriers as a result of their disability, being provided with necessary accommodations is important, and their legal right under the Americans with Disabilities Act. There is a wide spectrum of disabilities that can, and do, impact the way a person communicates and processes information. It is important to remember, however, that each person is an individual with different life experiences, strengths, and needs. Many people have more than one disability, which can make accommodations more complex. 60% of VCSP clients have more than one documented disability. So, what is a communication support specialist? A communication specialist is an individual specifically trained to understand the communication needs of people with disabilities. A communication support specialist is not an advocate, more like an interpreter of information. A CSS does not give legal advice. Our role is strictly to make sure that information is given and received in a way that is allowing the individual to fully participate in the meeting. So how do VCSP services work? We break down our services into a before, a during, and an after. A half an hour pre-meeting, the meeting itself, and a half an hour post-meeting. Before every meeting, there is a half an hour pre-meeting. Some of the tools we use during this time could be: review the purpose of the meeting, prioritizing questions and information, reviewing the process and etiquette of the meeting and why it is important, role play to ease anxiety, discussing needs around de-escalation and emotional support, agreeing on verbal cues to maintain focus, reviewing the technology needed to connect for remote meetings. The tools we use vary depending on the client and what they feel they need to communicate as effectively as they can. During the meeting, the role of the communication support specialist is to be supportive and to interject when necessary. The communication support specialist takes notes during the meeting to review with the client during the post-meeting. After every meeting, there is a 30-minute post-meeting. Some of the tools we use during this time could be: checking the individual's understanding of what was said by asking open-ended questions, employing de-escalation techniques such as encouraging physical movement, deep breathing, or time to regroup, reinforcing answers to questions that were posed and information that was given, helping organize follow-up questions and identifying the best person to answer those questions, reinforce understanding of what the next steps may be. Let me explain some things about our services. Outside of the pre- and post-meeting, we never meet with individuals on our own to explain paperwork or go over the case. There must always be a meeting scheduled with an FSW or Easter Seals caseworker. Case plan reviews sometimes require longer pre- and post-meetings. It is very helpful to include the case plan when scheduling a communication support specialist so that they have time to review the document before reviewing it with the individual in the pre-meeting. A client may have our services in court as well as for DCF meetings, but they are separate funding sources, and each body, the judiciary and the state, is responsible for scheduling the services that take place within their organization. The court notifies us of upcoming hearings, and the caseworker notifies us of upcoming DCF meetings. It is possible for the client to want our services in court, but not in DCF meetings, or vice versa. All scheduling for DCF meetings must come from the DCF caseworker. The communication support specialists often note the time and date of the next meeting in their field notes, but it can prove to be unreliable. It is easier if we are just added to the team and notified every time a meeting is scheduled along with everyone else. We are always happy to accommodate last-minute requests, but it is less stressful if we are given as much notice as possible so that we can get the closest and best CSS for the individual. All scheduling is done through the main VCSP office. Our communication support specialists work statewide, and depending on availability, an individual may not always have the same communication support specialist. If you have a client that has a disability that affects communication, and you feel that they may benefit from our services, tell them about us. If you share their contact information with us, we will be happy to reach out to them and tell them about our services. Clients can also contact us directly for an intake. Like any accommodation, it is up to the individual whether or not they want to use our services. Clients must have a disability that affects communication. We try to make sure eligibility for services does not create an unnecessary barrier. Broadly, all of our clients meet one or more of the following criteria: was on an IEP in school, is receiving or has received mental health treatment, is receiving or has received services from a designated agency, receives Social Security disability insurance, granted a communication support specialist through the court. Thank you for taking the time to learn about our services and for helping parents with disabilities access the services they need to engage as fully and as effectively as they are able. It is extraordinarily helpful to provide feedback on this video, our services, and our specialists. You can do this by calling, emailing, or texting, or using our feedback form on our website. We look forward to hearing from you.